How do? So I've been thinking for a while that it might be interesting to do some videos about the ARP Odyssey, partially because, well, I own one, and that does sort of make this sort of video just that little bit easier to do. And also because, well, I really love it, it's a fantastic synth. And of course, there's renewed interest in the ARP Odyssey at the moment with Korg's re-release, reissue. As with many things, there's a lot of information out on the internet about the Odyssey that is confusing and contradictory. I think a lot of this comes about because sometimes people try to simplify something that isn't a simple situation. Simply put, there were 3 different colour schemes, visual designs of the Odyssey. There were 3 different filters that were fitted to Odysseys throughout the years. And there were also 3 different marks, Mark 1, Mark 2 and Mark 3. And one of the problems is that the lines of demarcation, the cut-off points, don't always neatly line up, so it's not a straightforward situation. The one aspect of the different Odysseys that is most noticeable to most people is the colour scheme. The very first Odysseys are known as the whiteface Odysseys because this panel here is painted, actually I believe it's a very light grey, but on camera tends to look white. But otherwise it's pretty much the same, it's just sort of grey with black lettering on it. It's got the same coloured caps on the sliders. For most intents and purposes looks the same aside from the colour of the fascia. Then that was replaced by the design you see here, which in contrast to the whiteface, actually grey, these are known as blackface or black and gold. And they're called black and gold to differentiate between the last design, which was, again, a black fascia, but all the lettering and writing on it was a very bold orange colour. And for that reason they're sometimes known as the Halloween colour scheme, because it looks a little bit sort of pumpkin-y. The whiteface and the blackface were essentially constructed in the same way, that the top of the instrument is just a folded piece of sheet metal, and around the sides you have this U-shaped piece of plastic that forms the sides and the bottom of the instrument. And actually when you take them apart, this top pressed metal bit is a bit flimsy and wobbly because there's quite a lot of weight hanging off it. So this plastic, which is quite thick, does actually lend quite a lot of structural rigidity to it. Now the black and orange ones, the top was still metal, but the sides were metal as well, and they had leather glued to the ends. But the thing is, whereas this plastic bit, you probably can't see this, I think it's off the bottom of the frame, this plastic extends beyond the ends of the keys, whereas on the Mark III, the sides stopped short of the ends of the keys. So the ends of the keys stuck out, and it was quite common for the ends of the keys to get broken off when people sort of banged into it or dropped something on it, and that's a less common injury to the older ones. The 3 different filters that I mentioned, the earliest Odysseys had a 12 decibel per octave or 2-pole filter. That was then replaced by a 24 decibel per octave transistor ladder filter. Now if that sounds familiar, that's because the filter design actually infringed upon Moog's patent for the filter, and Moog had a quiet word with ARP about this. People talk about the lawsuit filter, but apparently there wasn't ever any lawsuit. But when this was brought to ARP's attention by Moog, they changed the design and did their own design 24 decibel per octave filter. The ARP designed filter had a design flaw. Somebody did the calculations wrong, put the wrong value resistors in, and this limited the bandwidth of the filter, and consequently it sounds a little bit duller because it doesn't go up to sort of 20 kilohertz or beyond. And it's possible to modify them to overcome this. I have no idea whether my instrument has been modified or not. Now the marks, that refers to the 3 series of model numbers that ARP gave the instruments. And these model numbers start 280 for the very first ones. Then you got the ones that were 281, and then finally ones that were 282. So all the Mark 1s were actually model 2800. They were all 2800s. The Mark 2s range from the 2810 through to, I'm not sure whether it's 2813 or 2815, I've seen both mentioned. And then finally there was the 2820 through to the 2823. All the Whiteface Odysseys are model 2800. So all Whitefaces are Mark 1s, but not all Mark 1s are Whitefaces, because right towards the end of the run they produced some model 2800s in the new black and gold livery that you see here. They still had the 12 decibel per octave filter that the Whitefaces had, so this is where some of the confusion starts to arise, because it's still a Mark 1 but it's a black face and it's still got the 12 decibel per octave filter. And I understand that those instruments, the black face Mark 1s, are really quite rare, and I think very sought after by some people. And then when the Mark II came along, so starting with the 2810, they continued with the black and gold livery that you see here, but the very first ones had this infringing filter design in 24 decibel per octave filter. And the different filter designs also had their own model numbers. So the 12 decibel per octave filter is the 4023 filter. The filter design that infringed on Moog's patent was the 4035 filter. And these were fitted to model 2810s. And then after about a year, ARP fitted their own design 24 decibel per octave filter in, which is the 4075 filter. But the model number remained the same, so 2810. So not all very early Mark IIs, not all model 2810s have the desirable to some Moog filter in. So you can't tell just by the model number if you're after that Moog filter. You can't tell just by the model number. And of course, over the years, people have modified them and changed filters and things like that. So really, the only surefire way to do it is to open it up and have a look at the filter and look at the model number on it. And then possibly the cleanest cut-off is between the Mark II and the Mark III, that when they moved from the 2810s through to the 2820s, that was when they changed the colour scheme from the black and gold to the black and orange. But there was no change of filter because they still used the 4075 filter that went from the very early, but not the earliest, Mark IIs. At some point along the line, the defect in the 4075 filter was corrected. So to summarise, all Whitefaces are Mark 1s. There are some black and gold, very late Mark 1s. Most black and golds are Mark IIs, but there are a few of those, as I mentioned, very late Mark 1s. All black and oranges are Mark IIIs. With regard to filters, all Whiteface Odysseys would have had the 12 decibel per octave filter from the factory. The blackface, very late Mark 1s also had the 12 decibel per octave filter. The very early model 2810 Mark IIs had the Moog filter in, and then the later 2810s through 2811, 12, 13 and 15 had the ARP designed 24 decibel per octave filter, which continued through into the Mark IIIs. So as you can see, it's a pretty muddled situation. There are other differences. There were changes to the power supply. I believe it was made more reliable. I think the power switch changed at some point. It might have coincided with the change of the design of the power supply. There were revisions to the main circuit boards inside. So you get things like all the 2800s, whiteface and blackface, had the B1 oscillator board. The 2810s with the Moog filter had either the B1 or the B2 oscillator board, and then all the 2810s onwards with the ARP filter had the B2 oscillator board, but some of the other boards had revisions to them as well. I've seen mention of changes to the sample and hold circuit to make it better, and the cut-off points for all these internal differences are all over the place. And just as an aside, I've seen similar things with classic cars from the 70s. They just used what they had lying around in the factory. So it was all a bit of a mess as to, what changes happened when. There are other differences as well, some which are quite apparent but not always from the top of the instrument. Around the back, later units had sockets for control voltage input and output so that you could hook the synth up to other synths and sequencers and use them together. The very earliest Odysseys didn't have those sockets for those CV inputs and outputs, but later ones did. And I believe that it was with the Mark IIs that the CV interfaces were added, but it wasn't right at the start of the Mark II run. Another visually noticeable difference is the addition of these three little pads here, which together are known as proportional pitch control, or PPC. The very earliest Odysseys here just had a knob for pitch bend, and you turned it clockwise and the pitch went up, and you turn it anti-clockwise and the pitch went down, and it wasn't sprung loaded as far as I'm aware, so it was a bit flaky getting it back in tune. Now with some synths that might be a good thing, because a lot of early analog synths, the oscillators drifted out of tune and you could retune on the fly, but that was never an issue with the Odyssey. It had very, very stable oscillators. There's none of this, the temperature rises a fraction of a degree and it goes out of tune. Someone opens the door and lets in a cold blast of air and the tuning goes out. There was never that with the Odyssey. So yeah, the earliest Odysseys had this pitch bend knob, but they had no easy way of applying vibrato, and so on later units ARP added the PPC pads. Now on the Mark III, the holes for these pads are cut in the main top, and so the pads themselves just sit slightly higher than the fascia of the synth. I believe that PPC was added in the factory to late Mark IIs. Now the PPC unit could be bought as a kit to retrofit to your Odyssey to add that functionality if you had one of the older ones with the pitch bend knob. Now I understand that when they started fitting PPC to the late Mark IIs from the factory, that it had the same appearance as the add-on kit. I suppose it reduced costs just having one design, and so that you can't actually tell whether it came with it from the factory or whether it's been retrofitted since by an owner. There was also a kit available from the factory to retrofit CV inputs and outputs to Odysseys that hadn't been factory fitted with it. So there you have a bit of a long and rambling look at the different models and the differences between the different models of Odyssey. But it was a bit of a convoluted and long and rambling set of changes, so it's not something that's easily simplified and condensed down.